From the time I could reach the keyboard, my mother sent me to have piano lessons. She had grand visions of me becoming a famous piano player, I'm sure, but unfortunately for her, that turned into a boogie-woogie. So she sent me to take violin lessons, and I became interested in hillbilly and country and bluegrass music, and I became a fiddle player. I've been playing this fiddle for some 65 years, and you think I'd be better at it after all that time, but I'm still working at it.
Why the Dismembered Tennesseans have lasted for, what, nearly 60 years now? More than 50 of them with the original personnel. Now that is unheard of in the music business.
If they're not local regional legends, I don't know who is.
It's like we all get together to jam, and there just happens to be a show in progress.
Getting together, making music, having fun. That's kind of what bluegrass, I think, is all about.
But I'm really proud of the Dismembered Tennesseans and all they've done for music, for bluegrass music, for the community, and for their families.
As somebody said, well, if you've been playing together 50 years, how come you're not any better? You know?
The Dismembered Tennesseans have been playing for almost 60 years. Today's Dismembered Tennesseans are continuing with the same traditions and even the same music that we played many years ago with the original band. I think the Dismembered Tennesseans of today are better than ever. We were teenagers at Macaulay School in Chattanooga when we were first exposed to live hillbilly music. Zeke Clements came by the school and performed at one of our assembly programs, and he totally inspired the entire student body, but particularly a group of us who could already play some of these instruments. And after that show, a few of us decided that we'd start our own hillbilly band.
There was 9 of us in the band at Macaulay. Found Sam and the Dismembered Tennesseans. It was a takeoff on Lost John and his allied Kentuckians was on the Grand Ole Opry, and that's Sammy Joyce was a good athlete and not a real good MC, but he would always draw a crowd. They started playing out at Macaulay School, and I think they just started playing because they had so much fun doing it. And we'd started playing a little bit for the Rotary Club and 1 or 2 other clubs, and of course they'd give us time at assembly at Macaulay.
We were quick to perform at every invitation. In those days it was common to have live bands at social functions, and we played for service organizations, we played for weddings, we played for bar mitzvahs.
Friday, Saturday night, weekend square dances were just where country music really got cemented into the social fabric. Probably more of our favorite in those days was Roy Acuff, though. Those are the songs that we started out playing.
We listened to Roy Acuff on the Grand Ole Opry every Saturday night, and we listened and tried to learn and play like they were doing it. We didn't have television sets or recorders, so we had to guess a little bit on how they were making their sounds. People that listen to this music frequently play the music themselves.
I remember when I first started hearing radio, when I was a small child, I remember that. And radio preceded me, but not by much.
Well, we did listen to the radio a lot because that's all there was. We didn't really have, as far as I remember, any family thing of listening to the Grand Ole Opry. It was mainly Fletcher and his friends.
It gave people a chance to access national stars, whereas up until then they'd only been able to listen to people in the local area that played.
Another thing is a lot of bluegrass players were in the service during World War II. They were thrown in with other types of music, with other types of musicians.
And then after the war, those guys brought back some music from other places. They brought back attitudes toward music from other places. And country music's always shown an amazing ability to slurp up other kinds of cultures and other kinds of sounds.
We had been listening to Bill Monroe for some time on the Grand Ole Opry, but we never heard sounds like those when he added Lester Flatt, Earl Scruggs, and Chubby Wise to the band. I believe that was about 1946. With that new band and that new sound, his music just traveled all over the South, and that sound would be called bluegrass. Bluegrass music borrowed from all sorts of sources. There were the old tunes that had been sung and passed around and performed for many years. And primarily Bill Monroe, with this new sound, took these old songs and added a spice of jazz, a little jazzy influence. He picked up the speed and put this music, if you will, in overdrive.
Somehow they had arrangements, but they were always improvising. They were always fooling around with little nuances, phrasing, timing, fitting in certain licks where you didn't expect them to be. And so that's the nature of the creativity. It was a formulaic kind of improvising. And that's certainly something that had been very common in jazz in the decade preceding.
When these new sounds came over the radio, it electrified the audiences.
It was a common reference. I had to pull the car off the road or I was going to wind up in the ditch. This blizzard of notes that was coming out of the radio left banjo pickers across the South scratching their head. How is that guy doing this?
Prior to this new sound, country music had been all about the show and the comedy, the style and the jokes. The bands that got the gigs were the ones that could entertain a crowd. But this new music changed everything.
The bread and butter for bluegrass bands became, listen to those guys pick and sing.
Zeke Clements inspired us to form a band. Bill Monroe inspired us to become musicians. For the three of us, Frank McDonald, Ainsley Moses, and myself, the Dismembered Tennesseans became a lifetime commitment.
I guess what you're baptized in to start with, you never really completely get away from. That's kind of beautiful too.
After we graduated from Macaulay, we all went to college. Frank went to W&L, and Ainsley and I went to Davidson near Charlotte, North Carolina. Ainsley sought out one of the pioneers of the three-finger Scruggs-style banjo.
I've heard about Shannon Grayson, who lived in Charlotte and played with Arthur Smith, and I called him and he agreed and gave me 2 or 3 lessons over there, and my 2 roommates just about lost their minds, me sitting around the room doing this three-finger style over and over again. Needless to say, they didn't want to room with me the next year. When I came back from Davidson, I started learning the banjo, and Cullis and Bob Johnson were interested.
And as luck would have it, Ainsley had just bought a new Gibson banjo, and his old one was sort of laying over there on the side of the stage. And I looked longingly at it, you know, and so I bought it for $40.
Well, that's right. I bought a new banjo, and Fletcher helped me finance it. Cost $150, and that took about 3 years to pay him back. And I remember giving Cullis 2 or 3 lessons. That's been my main claim to fame.
They showed me this much, 3 fingers, dong, 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 dong. And then they went back to college.
During our college years, we were unable to perform as the Dismembered Tennesseans, but we stayed in contact as close friends, and we look forward to reuniting the original group as soon as we could.
Mick came back home. He went to work for the home stores. I went in the Navy in '52, got out in '56, so I was gone about 4 years. Fletcher was finishing up school, then he came back and went into the real estate business. We really started in earnest in 1956 when we were all back.
They started getting these engagements and playing at all the Rotary clubs, every wedding, every place they could. They were well received. They got paid sometimes, and sometimes they didn't.
Put your hands together and make welcome the Dismembered Tennesseans right here.
Long gone is how I'm leaving, long gone I do cry. This is what you wanted, baby, so gone, long gone.
All of this time we were raising our expanding families and attending to our daytime jobs. Frank McDonald ran the home store grocery chain, which was owned by his family, and then later became the publisher of the Chattanooga News Free Press. Ainsley Moses became vice president of American National Bank and guided their investment and bond trading group for many years. Doc Cullis was an orthodontist with a successful practice here in town. And I started in the real estate business with my father when I graduated from Davidson College in 1953. He died in 1960, and I've continued that business until today. One day I went up in a light plane to look at a piece of property, and to see real estate from the air was a revelation. I was totally hooked on flying and immediately started taking flying lessons.
I remember he took flying lessons after he started to work and realized, I think, how it would facilitate transportation. And he got his pilot's license.
Well, you're talking about Fletcher's flying, and Mick also did that. And then they both started flying in the business way. You know, Mick would go visit newspapers and Fletcher would fly and whatever he was doing. But it's the same thing like when they always went fishing in the Swanee River. I mean, they went fishing every year for 2 weeks, regardless of what happened.
Frank McDonald fished with a spinning reel, and he was amazingly accurate with it. We would fish all day. We would play music well into the night. Sometimes for our own pleasure, sometimes we could draw a crowd. Our music and our excursions have been our release, and they have served to bind us together as brothers.
They went to Cleveland for about a month to play for Magic Chef. And they'd get home like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, you know. And you know they'd been just kind of had a couple. And then they'd have to get up and go to work the next morning, but that was okay.
Frank McDonald was a marvelous MC. He would work an audience until he would find a trigger that would make that audience laugh.
I saw a flashlight, flash bulb out there. There went another one there, and I think I want to tell you what our policy is on having you take our pictures like this. We have no problem with it. If you want to have a tape recorder and just turn it on, we really don't mind. The only thing we ask is that if you ever sell any of that to anybody, we want to know who you sold it to, because we have some other memorabilia that we would like to talk to them about. And we quite frankly have 8 by 10 pictures for those of you who have left your cameras at home and feel like you've missed out on a perfect photo opportunity. They're available up here, and for a crowd this size, we brought 2 dozen, and I would call that unlimited quantities.
At some point, we decided to do an LP. We weren't convinced that we were good enough to do an LP, but we were going to try it, and it would be fun, and it would be a great prop.
They said, well, think up a name for the album. You know, it's kind of like that. So I said, okay.
You tossed a few around, or?
Tossed a few around, and they go, oh, no, that's not good. So then I just came up with 40 Years with the Wrong Band, and they just thought that was great.
I believe you could leave this album lying in the front seat of an unlocked automobile and come back 4 days later, and you'll find this album right there where you left it. Now, your car may be jacked up on cinder blocks, and they may have forcibly removed the radio from the dash panel, but I can tell you that the album is right there where you want it.
We were a very entertaining group, but the music was not too challenging. There might be 5 songs, 6 songs that we did, and we did a show.
No, we didn't. We didn't work up a whole lot of new material for. We're all pretty busy and didn't, never practice.
And they would practice relentlessly right before the show.
In those days we were primarily an entertainment group. We never really took the music seriously. Ed Cullis, now he was interested more in the music than in the entertainment value of our group. Ed Cullis joined us in the 1950s and has been with us ever since, except for a brief sabbatical.
Well, I know a few years back, the band used to have seemed like they had a whole lot more fun than any of their audiences ever did.
There was a time, believe it or not, when Fletcher and Frank and maybe even Mose were, let's say, lean toward.
Those boys were bad to drink, as they say.
And anyway, that impaired their ability.
It didn't seem to hinder their playing, but I've got to confess to you, Walter, that I may have been drinking too. So it may have been something. If it was affected, I couldn't tell.
I think there was a particular occasion when they had an extraordinarily big amount of fun.
He got a little put out with us at one show.
And Doc had all the fun he could stand and took his banjo and went home for about 5 years, I think.
We, of course, had to get another banjo player, and so we looked for a substitute, and one of the best we got was Ben Pettigo.
Frank and Fletcher and Ansley were so kind. Here I was out of college, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about music, and I didn't know a thing about music, but they were very kind.
He had played with Bill Monroe when he was a student at Vanderbilt, so he was what you call hot. He would play it a lot faster with a lot more authority and he would kick off a tune, and Frank McDonald wouldn't even. He would leave Frank McDonald in his stirrups.
And in fact, Frank gave me a job at the Chattanooga News Free Press. He and his family were very kind, and they're very good people. They took care of me in a lot of ways that I realize that I'm very thankful that I got a chance to share some time with them.
There you have him, Mike Parham making his debut on the 5-string banjo, and what a happy guy he is right now.
Doc who? I started playing with the Dismembered Tennesseans in the late 70s. Frank McDonald called me for a gig and wanted me to play banjo. Told me he knew who I was, but he felt sure I didn't know who he was or who they was, and I really didn't. And he said, fine, meet us at the Red Lantern Lounge. And I thought, boy, I hope this works. I kind of got scared because I knew that was a rough location in town. But I got there ready to play, and Fletcher, Frank, and Mose showed up in an old blue 4-door, beat up. And they showed up with their stage clothes in a bag, old ruffled coats and overalls and a hat. I mean, stuff that just looked pretty bad. And they come peeling out of that car. And here come the bass fiddle, and they beat the bridge back in place and got out, and we introduced ourselves, and turned out to be a very memorable night, but I didn't really know who they were for probably a solid year.
We had booked the 1,500-seat Tivoli Theater for a big show. We had secured the services of John Hartford from Nashville, Tennessee, and things were coming together pretty well. This was going to be a big benefit for the Siskin Foundation. However, Ben Pettigo had moved on, Mike Parham was out of town, and we needed a banjo player. So we swallowed our pride and called Ed Cullis.
He calls me up and he sweet talks me into playing with him, you know.
We weren't so bold as to suggest that Ed rejoin the band. We thought that we would take it step at a time and see if he was willing to play this show.
So I played with him, and then, of course, that was, I was back in the band as of then, and I've been there ever since.
Doc Cullis came back after about 5 years or so, and they said, look, we want you to stay in the band, play another instrument. So I actually learned to play the mandolin on stage, making good money with this band. I just chopped rhythm, and we was just a heck of a band.
We got Mike Parham over here. Mike is a talented guy. He plays every instrument that you see on stage up here. And we felt that at our age we ought to consider the fact, at least, that one of us might be called in the middle of a performance like this. And if that were the case, if it did happen, then God forbid, but you know, you got to think, and Mike would simply walk over and pick up the instrument off of the lately departed, and the show would go on to its ultimate conclusion with no one the worse for it, except probably the lately departed, maybe, but...
His dry wit would simply entertain the crowd, and we didn't even have to play.
What Frank brought to the band was that sense of almost like a medicine show, and almost like a minstrel kind of a feeling.
And he would usually carve up everybody in the band pretty bad, you know, just...
Little Doc Cullis over there, we kid him a lot, of course, about being short. I mean, that'd be the first thing that would come to your mind. And he topped out at a pretty early age, and he is up here tonight as big as he will ever be, we believe.
You never knew what he was going to say. So it got to be the joke that in his shows, somebody has to die.
Fletcher Bright, a fella that represented the great state of Tennessee down at the championships down at Lake Lanier, and it's a fiddle championship down there, and but for the grace of God and two pretty sorry fiddle players, he would have come in dead last down there. And
my favorite joke is the one about Ansley, and how he started wearing a girdle ever since his wife found one in the glove compartment of his car. For the longest, I didn't understand that.
He would say that I'm over there playing the lowly dobro, waiting for my shot at one of the big time instruments.
Frank McDonald was the best frontman for a bluegrass band I ever saw at any level.
Moses is he is the lead singer of this band, the only legally deaf entertainer on the American stage today, and we've always said that if we ever get a little bit of money ahead, we're going to buy him a hearing ear dog that could bite him when it was his turn to sing, keep us from having to kick him.
You know, he was the consummate straight man, and I don't think that there's anybody that came out of vaudeville or did movies over the years, the George Burnses or anybody else, who were any better at it than Frank was.
He took up a lot of time on the shows, which the musicians didn't like. You know, they'd sometimes just sit down on the floor.
My name is Frank McDonald, and I do most of the talking, do quite a bit of the talking, and I can only suggest that if I did not talk as much, we would have to go out and learn some more songs.
Of course, most musicians want to make more money than musicians make anyway, and they want fancy cars and all of that stuff. This was never a problem with the Dismembered Tennesseans, and so they kept a wonderful attitude of informality about their music.
Sure, it was different. They weren't relying on gig money for a living, but that became irrelevant.
One of the things that amazes me about that group of people, of which I was not an original part, obviously, but I came in pretty close to the beginning of the show, is that they were together all their lives.
They had a friendship that really you could almost envy. Those boys did, those men rather, because it's rare. And I accused them of never really talking about anything meaningful. But they just had a great time. Yeah. Jokes, one joke after another, and
what people didn't see was the show. I mean, the trips to and from the shows, these guys are at each other's throats verbally.
The most fun we ever had was riding to the gig.
We'd meet somewhere, all get in the car or the van, and it would already be going. When I get in, it would already be at each other's throats.
I mean, it's constant abuse. I mean, these guys have been friends for so long, they're just...
Well, I see you don't know where we're going. Well, I know perfectly well where we're going. You know, it seems like to me, like...
When I first played with them, I was in my 20s, and I didn't understand their humor. I thought these guys are pissed off at each other. You know, they really don't like each other.
It was a comedy show on the road that nobody ever got to hear but us.
If we went anywhere playing for anybody's, this one's parties, or maybe Fletcher would have a function, or Frank, it was just like a big family.
I've gotten to go places and meet people that I would have never done otherwise.
Fletcher would fly us everywhere. We would fly to Hilton Head, or we would fly to West Virginia for any given call. So that was pretty exciting, getting on the plane and taking off with a band. Felt like somebody, you know, Mom's not going to believe this, you know. You never guess where I played last night.
I always tell my friends that I'm a bluegrass princess because I get to go to the airport. I actually had car trouble one time and got to tell somebody, I've got to go. They're holding a plane for me at the airport.
So that going to Pennsylvania is not a 13, 14, 15-hour road trip up and back, but it's a 2.5-hour plane flight and a nice motel, and you know, it's just so easy. It's a pleasure instead of a chore.
It was always fun. Never a bad show. Even if somebody broke a string or fell off the stage or whatever, there's never a bad show.
Mick never practiced guitar. We called him Captain Hook because of the way he hooked into the bass strings.
Frank would just get absolutely 180 degrees out, you know. The downbeat was here and the upbeat was here, and Frank would be down, up.
Ainsley said his guitar playing sounded like a square tire, and the front of his guitar looked like it had been worked on with an electric grinder.
This is a guy that never took his guitar out of the case between gigs. He's the only guy that I've ever seen in my life that could break a string. He would get out the fifth string, take off the old string, and then when the song was over, he'd start talking to the audience. He'd have that thing ready for the next song.
In the early 1990s, we noticed that Mick was having trouble playing the guitar. His right hand wasn't working right. He said nothing about it for quite some time, but then it was discovered and we found that he had ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease.
We went through a period when he just said he had some back problems and couldn't keep up the rhythm.
After Mick could no longer play the guitar, he continued to perform, and he emceed all our shows, and he sang, and his humor continued unabated.
Start down here on my left and your right. His name is Fletcher Bright. He's a fiddle player standing down there, and underneath that silly little hat he's got on is carefully concealed a hair restoration project, and we're anxious to maybe come back next year and see how that gets along. Well, it's all right, yeah. Well, that's sort of where we are right now.
We used to drive him in our cars for a while and put on a chauffeur's cap, and then of course he bought a van that would accommodate his wheelchair. But he tried his best, you know, to keep going, and we played one show in Washington at the Kennedy Arts Center, and he emceed that. Of course, that was past his playing days, when Mick was still, had been confined to a wheelchair.
We are the Dismembered Tennesseans. We're from Tennessee, and I think I might say sort of out front that we don't really advertise or condone anybody drinking, but the bar is open back there. If you do drink, I bet you'll go back there. If you don't drink, this show will give you a better understanding as to why other people do.
We went up there and played a concert, and we flew up with our wives, and it was really a tremendous deal. But he held up through it all. As I've told many people, that's the one day in our lives that Garth Brooks didn't have a thing on us.
We also have a bumper sticker. For those of you who are into bumper stickers, this is a big night for you. It says, honk if you have played with the Dismembered Tennesseans. Well, it'll amaze you. Over 52 years, we've had so many different people up on stage with us. That sticker has drawn honks in Birmingham, Montgomery, New Orleans. It drew a honk in Denver, Colorado. Now that one was accompanied by an obscene gesture. But we count all the honks.
Mind-boggling to me, your mind in that disease is never impaired at all. He was a dear friend, and we all just loved being around him. To me, my playing days were just underscored by the fact that he just made you feel better being around him. You'd have hard days at work and things didn't go right, but play a show with him that night, it was just really uplifting.
We're going to step off the stage with a tune that we like to play, and we also have to play. Is it a fiddle tune? It's one of the required. It's a fiddle tune. Can we do a fiddle tune? All right.
I think in a real sense, the Dismembered Tennesseans became an important cultural resource and asset for the Chattanooga community over a number of decades. And their benefits of that were wide-reaching, beyond the fun that they had, beyond the entertainment that they afforded to audiences.
And I'm so glad to see them still going at it. And you know, I think one thing that's contributed to an upsurge in their popularity is their music gets better all the time. Like adding Laura Walker.
Leaves are falling and turning in showers of gold as a postman climbs up our long hill. And this sympathy written all over his face as he hands me a couple more bills. Who will watch the home place? Who will tend my heart's dear space? Who will fill my empty place when I am gone from here?
I wanted to sing my whole life. In fact, my mother sang. She and I used to sing in the car when we would travel and stuff. But I grew up with rock and roll and I couldn't sing that kind of music. And I was really frustrated. somebody set me free when they introduced me to bluegrass and country music.
Who will watch the home place? Who will tend my heart's dear space? Who will fill my empty place when I am gone from here?
The people out there in the audience, they like to see you get into the music, and it's a type of communication, because when they see you having fun and you're in the beat and you're grooving and you're having fun and it's good to you, then it just communicates through your music and they give it back to you.
We're learning some new material, and a lot of it features Laura's new work, and a lot of it are some things that we just like to do, which I think is what sets us apart, because we don't try to do top 40, obviously.
All the people would come from far away to dance all night till the break of day. Caller would holler, do-si-do, and he knew it was time for him to go. Lady, you can bounce them down, how on the hill above the town. Uncle B made the fiddle, or how it would ring. You could hear it talk, you could hear it sing.
It's not any one virtuoso. This is a collective, and you go into it in that frame of reference as a collective.
I've played with them off and on for about 10, 12 years. I enjoy playing with the Dismembered Tennesseans. It's a lot of fun, and I think ultimately that's why we all do it.
It was a long, long time ago when I left my home to roam down in the hills of Tennessee with the sweetest little girl that was ever in this world. Back in the hills of Tennessee. Oh, the little girl of mine in Tennessee, I know she's waiting there for me. Someday I'll settle down in that little country town with that little girl of mine in Tennessee.
We're the newer history of this band, and hopefully we're going to see that it continues and grows with the same respect and love for music as it has in the last 50 years.
Oh yeah, I've been with it for about 20 minutes, 30 minutes now playing, and it's great, nice people. Well, Fletcher Bright called me about 2-3 weeks ago and asked me to come play. I've never met Fletcher, and to come play dobro, and then I'm looking for a good time tonight, and I think I'm going to have it.
We have such a good time when we're traveling, and traveling in style. Hi, Walter.
Hey, darling.
Well, of course, we're all friends, and that makes it fun in and of itself.
All four of them. This is definitely
Once again, Fletcher Bright just, smooths everybody's way with the airplane, the pilot. He just makes everything easy.
The band that plays together stays together. Yeah.
We have the good fortune to get to travel. We played in Lowell, Massachusetts this year.
Tennessee. Most of us are from Chattanooga, and I'm sure that some of you have wondered what in the world we're doing way up here in Massachusetts.
Thought we was invited.
And we're wondering the same thing, except we are a touring band, of course, and we're on tour at this point. Our tour started early Saturday morning. And it'll be over here about 5 o'clock this afternoon.
And although Fletcher is as good as 99% better than 99% of the bluegrass MCs out there, he's not Frank McDonald. Nobody is. You know.
We don't know why he's so short. We think it was perhaps because he smoked a lot when he was young and it stunted his growth. And the other idea that we've had, his mother rocked him a lot when he was young with these great old big rocks. And he hadn't been rocked in a long time, but he has been stoned on several occasions.
Now, I think that the quality of music is very high quality of music. I think maybe the change would be more of a technical type of a presence that they have. I mean, it's sophisticated harmonies, pretty sophisticated fiddle tunes, timing, you know, different chord patterns, those kinds of things.
The darkest hour is just before dawn.
They're very good musicians, but they maintain a lot of that old-time abandon. They retain some of the old-time style, and they're not afraid to improvise on stage.
Kick it off again.
That's too goddamn.
Get that off.
There's Diamond for you.
Okay. We don't let a little thing like confidence stand in the way of a good show. If we're happy with it, one run through, then you know, we usually put it on the program.
You know, when the younger blood came in, the band evolved from an entertainment-only drift to they started playing some good music, and you know, it's the best band I've ever played in. We started getting serious about our music, and we learned to kick them off together, and I always heard if you can start them and end them together, all the rest of it just kind of falls into place.
Sometimes it falls, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But you never know.
Not until you try.
That's the good thing about not being very good. See, you can do it any way you want to, and nobody knows the difference.
And I think contemporary bluegrass audiences are looking for different material, especially in the vocal sides of the performances.
Because I don't like my bluegrass too slick, and I don't want it to sound like somebody went into the recording studio and dubbed the vocals in separately and dubbed the guitar in and did everything track on track the way most records are being done today. I don't want that Nashville slick sound in there.
I think there's some truth to that. I think the fact that we maybe are more relaxed and are not as uptight about the music we play, or you know, or make it as competitive as some of the bands of today and some of the bands of yesterday, and to be able to relax and play music and have fun together, it goes a long way.
They just get gooder and gooder. You know, that's all I can say about them.
So the new direction of the Dismembered Tennesseans has really been an acceptance of youth and an acceptance of change.
The new Dismembered Tennesseans have a polish. I think Fletcher's focal point on music as a whole just really came to a head when the band members started changing.
I think if it's like any relationship, I think if it's cultivated and it looked after, I think it can stand the test of time, and I think that's why the Dismembered Tennesseans have been playing music for 50 years.
We stayed together for 55 years, I guess, and the reason being it was fun, a diversion from business pressures, and we just enjoyed being together.
All right, here we are, the Dismembered Tennesseans, and we have just landed here in Hartford, Kentucky, and we are going to get on a van and head over to Rosine, Kentucky, the home place of Bill Monroe, and play a bluegrass festival. The whole gang is here, and we are still at it, and we'll keep playing as long as people want to listen to us.
Walter,
Let's go, boys and girls.
all got drunk. Sal got a lick and had a piece of pie, had a piece of pudding, and I give it all away to Doug. Sal Fletcher!